Welcome to the Skelton Report. I'm Mark Nathaniel Skelton, and today we're going to be talking about what to do if you suspect that or feel or think that a loved one or family member has dementia. So let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. Again, what to do if you think that a family member has dementia. And why are we discussing this topic? I think it's very important because it's going to be a very emotionally taxing process. Again, our community in particular is hit pretty heavy with it when it comes to minorities. And so I just want to help us better understand what's going on and provide some direction on what to do. So I don't know everything, but the little bit that I do know, I want to share with you, and maybe it can help out a little bit. So the topics of discussion will be knowing the signs. You want to know the signs and the symptoms, kind of what's going on. You want to set up neuropsychological testing. And then you want to think about treatment and support. So let's get into those a little further. So when we're talking about knowing the signs and the symptoms, these are the red flags, or kind of what to look for, or things that'll tip you off that maybe something deeper is going on. And so the DSM-5, TR Text Revive, that's the Diagnostical Statistical Manual. It's number 5. Text Revive is the newest one. That's kind of in layman terms, the Bible the Bible of diagnosing, in the sense that's where the clinicians use to see if you meet a criteria for a disorder. And so when it comes to neurocognitive disorders, there's 6 areas that they really look at, and let's kind of look at those. So attention is one. That's in our instance, it'd be poor concentration, distracted easily, maybe having difficulty with stimuli. Executive function, that's another area that's looked at. Poor judgment, decision making, difficulty with 2-step or complex tasks like cooking, finding difficulty with cooking or driving or working a controller or remote. These are more executive functioning skills. Another area is memory and learning. So you're noticing trouble with short-term memory, repeatedly asking questions, losing items, needing constant reminders. And another thing is it could be a combination of all these. And there could be confusion is another thing. You see a lot of confusion, which can, again, hit on all of those areas. Another one is language. All right, so difficulty speaking, difficulty finding words, not understanding what's being said to them. That's another red flag. Perceptual motor, that's more so orientation or difficulty assembling items. And even in this motor piece, we can send that out a little bit. It's where kind of Parkinson's comes into play, difficulty moving. So those type of things. Social cognition is emotions. So, maybe more irritable aggression or awkward behaviors. So what you want to do is you want to see these areas and kind of notice that, core areas. But then also you want to note the severity. When it gets serious, and this is a question to ask, does the defect interfere? So defect in these areas, do they interfere with independence in everyday activities? And if it does, that's when you really want to do something about it, right? They can't operate again, and this is more than just normal aging. They really aren't able to do some of the daily activities that they used to. So things I've heard and experience and work with is, bills, doing finances, ADLs daily cleaning, keeping themselves hygiene, all that. When that starts deteriorating, and what you also, that's more when it's major. And there's another category of mild, so it doesn't necessarily interfere, but it can still get in the way of just regular living. So impacting you at work, in that sense. So again, these are the red flags you want to look for. You want to look for these areas, and you want to notice the kind of severity of it, and you want to catch it early. So if you're noticing it, you want to get it before it gets major. And so if you notice these things, the next thing you want to do is you want to set up neuropsychological testing and assessment. These are kind of $50 words. All right, they're all kind of the same and really related. So let's talk about what is testing. Testing is simply, it's a neuropsychological evaluation is testing to measure how well a person's brain is working. All right, so what you'll do is you'll do a number of tests that are research backed and they'll help bring out the strengths and the weaknesses of an individual, of their those areas we talked about, of their attention, of their reasoning, right, of their perceptual motor skills, these type of things. So you want to do this because it's going to give you some insight about what's really going on. So in order to get to this testing, though, all right, where do you get testing? So typically, what I've seen from practicum and talking with others and colleagues, what I'm learning is generally it can be a referral. So your physician, primary care physician, a neurologist or a psychiatrist, or maybe another health or medical professional that you're working with, they can make that referral for you to a neuropsychologist. Or again, you can do a self-referral. All right. You notice these signs, you can talk to the family member and try to set this up yourself, and or talk to their primary care and get that set up. And neuropsychologists are the ones who generally do the testing or make the diagnosis for a neurocognitive disorder, primarily. And they can work in private practice and are, group practice or a medical setting or a hospital. So that's where you can find it. But you want to look for a neuropsychologist that does neuropsychological testing. And so let me tell you a little bit about the parts of the assessment. So the parts of the assessment is generally, there's going to be these three parts. There's going to be an intake, there will be a neuropsychological testing or battery, that's this part, manifested, and then a follow-up session. And it just depends, again, on the neuropsychologist and what model they use, because some will do this all in one setting. You do the interview, generally takes an hour, then you get right into the testing, and then maybe the follow-up sessions after that, because you got to score the testing and interpret it and write up the report. Or you might do the intake like a week beforehand, come in, do the testing, come back a week later or so and do this. Or it could be a month process. Just know that. But these are the three major parts. You do the intake, you get background information on what's going on. They get an understanding of, what are the deficits, what are we noticing, what's some of the background history, family history. Then you actually do the testing, all right, and know that's going to be about 2 to 3 hours plus, all right, generally speaking. And then there's like a report where they write up the reports, and the results may go back to the physician who interprets it, or they may have it with the family, but it's a feedback session on what to do and what the actual results are. All right, and then last, but not least, is the treatment and support. And again, I underline this because it solely depends on the diagnosis, and that's what's really important. That's why it's so important to actually do this, to really find out what's going on, because it can be a major neurocognitive disorder, it can be a minor one, it could be moderate, severe, and it may not even be a neurocognitive disorder to begin with. It all depends. So again, it really depends on the diagnosis, and that's why it's important to go through with this to really find out what is going on. I cannot stress that enough. And I can even provide an example where an individual was pretty strong in those areas that we discussed, the neurocognitive areas, but they weren't able to keep up with their surroundings and their household and all this. But what it really boils down to, again, was depression. All right. Depression was the main thing getting in the way. And I've worked with some soldiers in the sense too, where PTSD symptoms are more so what's getting in the way than the actual neurocognitive disorders. So again, it's case by case, but just keep that in mind. And again, then that determines what the treatment's going to be. That's going to vary as well. All right. So, depending on what it is, could be medication. If someone has aphasia, that's a neurocognitive disorder, frontal temporal disorder. That's going to be more like a speech therapy thing, depending on what stage they're in it. Is there going to be a need for housing transition? Meaning, do they need to get an assisted living? Or, or we're going to have to talk about driving privileges. So again, it's very important to get that testing so you can find out what's going on, so you can figure out what steps. And I have to say, family support is very important, right? This is where you come together, you start having the real conversations. Who's doing what for mom or dad or grandparents? It's prayer part of your treatment as well. Social support, that's where that all comes into play, tailored to this. Who's going to be helping out with follow-up sessions, going back to the doctor, anything like that. So those are like the three major parts. And to recap and bring it back all together, just know the signs. And we talked about those 6 areas. six main areas. All right, the attention, executive language, all those type of things like that, and how's it impacting? How severe is it? When you notice those, you want to set up an appointment as soon as possible to get with a qualified professional who can do that testing. And again, generally neuropsychologists do that, and there's going to be a intake, and you're going to do the testing, and then there'll be a report, and then with that, after the diagnosis is given, you can get a clear idea of what's actually going on, and then that's when you can think about treatment and support, which is going to be different for every case. So I hope that was helpful. If you found this helpful, I'm at these platforms, Twitter, IG, Udemy, and the Skelton Report on YouTube, and just subscribe. The Skelton Report on Apple Podcasts, and for similar information. If you found that helpful, and here goes the resources for today. And yeah, I hope you found that helpful. And I'll just catch you guys on the next go around again. Just in case if you notice a loved one or anybody that may be having these conditions, again, I just want to put this information out there, and others, just what do we do about it, so there's not so much fear, and just knowing how to handle it. So hope you found that helpful, and I will check you out on the next go around. Peace.